Now I'm ready.
Hey.
I apologize for this taking forever, technological difficulties. But we didn't have to call 2100, it's all good. Again, I'm Jean Norman, if you haven't met me yet, also known as Jean Sherman Norman. I know that can get confusing, so either way, I'm Jean, and that works just fine. I'm with the Academic Support Center. Today we are going to talk about attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, otherwise known as ADD and ADHD. Part of what we're going to talk about is what it is, kind of where it comes from, a little bit of biology, and a lot about relationships, how to study better, also how to deal with people who might have it. Let's say you have a loved one with ADD or ADHD. So it's what it is, working with it, and we even answer the question whether or not it's real, because there are people who think it's just one of those made-up things because we don't want to parent our children. So we'll go into a little bit about it. ADHD defined. Wikipedia. And we can go to Wikipedia sometimes. It's not the best place for research, but it describes ADHD as a developmental disorder. So it's a developmental disorder primarily characterized by the coexistence of attention problems and hyperactivity. In other words, you have trouble paying attention and you've got the wiggles. That's another way to put it to make it easier. So you have trouble paying attention to what's going on, and you don't want to sit there and pay attention to what's going on. It's harder for you. It's also referred to as attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. So again, the differences are ADD, attention deficit disorder, having trouble paying attention, ADHD, having trouble paying attention, but with, we're going to call it, with the wiggles. So you're tapping your feet. You want to move. You need to be paying attention to something else in order to pay attention to the big picture. In other words, you get things better when there's more going on. Characteristics defined. Inattention or hyperactivity and impulsivity. In other words, you've got the impulse to move. Sometimes you think before you act. I have a girlfriend diagnosed as an adult. Her mother called her a bull in a china shop. She always had bruises. She was always bumping into something. She was a bit gangly. My girlfriend is 6 foot tall. She's always been bigger and she just bumps into things. That's part of her ADHD. She's got the impulses, she wants to move forward, but isn't always able to pay attention to where she's moving. It does have an onset before the age of 7. Again, that's been debated. Currently, there has been a rash of children who have been given ADHD meds around the age of 2 or 3. That kind of begs the question when you look at it and say, really? What is ADHD? Having trouble paying attention? Being impulsive. What do 3-year-olds do? They have trouble paying attention and they're impulsive. So it might be hard to define that they have this problem. Just by virtue of, holy cow, that's what they're like. The symptoms are present at home and at school, which means it's not necessarily the environment. Again, we'll talk about the drugs that we are given a little bit. Let's say Adderall is one of them. Ritalin is another. The drugs can be helpful, but they can also make you tired. Sometimes these drugs are given to children just when they're at school and not when they're at home. We're also going to examine the environment and how changing the environment can change the reaction. It can interfere with developmentally appropriate functioning in social or academic areas. It makes sense. If you have trouble paying attention, the last thing you want to do is sit in a classroom. You want to get up, you want to move around. So sometimes what we'll do with kids with ADHD is let them get up, get a glass of water, get a tissue, just move for a minute, because it's going to change their mindset and their pattern a little bit. Again, sometimes people with ADD or ADHD are going to learn better when there is music, when there's something else going on. Me personally, I can't listen to music when everything else is happening. They need to, many times. You need to have other things going on in the background so that you can focus on the forefront. I want to go over some myths. People have a lot of thoughts and opinions about ADD. They do sometimes question the existence of the disorder. Again, that goes back to blaming the parents, saying it's always a parent's fault. They're lazy. They don't want to parent their kids. Busy teachers, they think, well, maybe someone would rather have these kids drugged up, get them on something to make them easier to deal with. Some might feel that the kids are labeled, lumped into categories. So I guess the question is, look at how you feel. You may already have a perception, a way that you feel about ADD, ADHD. Hopefully, it'll give you, you'll come away with this with another perspective, another way to look at it. My thought process is, I'm going to go with it is real. Why? Because I've seen the changes people can make. I've also worked in a department that works with people with ADD and ADHD. Just this weekend, I had a gentleman sit next to me and say, once he was diagnosed, medicated, learned to work with it, it saved his marriage. That's a huge statement. I have to do if you remember, this is your brain on drugs, when you crack something open, if anybody remembers that one. Well, this is your brain with ADHD. So once again, when people say it's made up, somebody just doesn't feel like paying attention, no, here's your control subject, here's your ADHD subject. And it'll go with the colors of high and low. There is a difference in how the brain works. But that tells you, so what? So there's a difference. What are we going to do about it? Are we going to change how we teach? Are we going to change how we react to people with it? Or if we find out that we might have these symptoms, what are we going to do about how we act? To make us easier to deal with, maybe. So again, the disorder is real. We might overdiagnose it. We may point to people, say they have it. Maybe they don't have it, but it has been proven to exist. There is something to be said. We have known about it for a while. I'll even go through lists of people who do have it. This goes back to blaming the parents. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm a parent. My daughter can blame me for plenty of stuff. She can, and she's going to continue to. I even tell her that, why save for college? We're just going to start saving for therapy on a bad day. We really are going to do both. We could blame them. And I'm sorry if this is a little hard to read, but because in up to 75% of the cases, it's considered hereditary. So what does this mean? This means that, let's say, for example, the nice gentleman who told me he was recently diagnosed, he was only diagnosed because his daughter was. That's how he figured it out. So this goes through the genes question. Don't worry, there's no quiz. I can't even memorize all this stuff. But we've gone through very specific genes that are partly responsible for ADD and ADHD. Again, that says that if your parents have it, there's a good shot you have it. But since we're finding out more about it, we're more likely to diagnose kids and then go back and diagnose their parents. My sister's got it. She was diagnosed as an adult. She has dyslexia and ADHD. Didn't make her love school very much. It made it rough for her. We do have environmental factors, if people are wondering where this comes from. We think that pesticides may have increased the incidence. And if you look at it, we didn't used to use pesticides before. Artificial food colorings could have an effect. There is an absolute possibility. Child neglect, especially in orphan